We in the club, we getting our groove on, shaking it up. And Prince came in. Prince had on it was like a Zorro type outfit. It had the ruffles that come down in the front. He had the big perms fluffed out, and his mustache and everything that was drawn on his face. And it looked like something that a figure skater would wear. You know what I'm saying?
Unfortunately, there are certain stars who won't do what we want.
What's their problem? They're still alive.
Homer, would you be willing to acquire some more, accounts for us?
It is awfully hot today. No, I'm too cold.
Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est?
I heard that you have a vault of hundreds of unreleased songs. Are you ever going to release them and let us hear?
One day, someone will release them. I don't know that I'll get to release them.
He said something that really hit home about this phenomena of chemtrails.
How much lead are you putting in my neighborhood? Lead affects my thinking capacity. Lead, there's only one thing on the planet more dangerous than lead, and that's manganese. Manganese will make you kill your mama. And let me tell y'all something. If you want to see the largest homicide rate in the world, it ain't in no black ghetto in America. It's a little town in Australia where them white folks' homicide rate is 200 times what their population is. That town is located across the street from a manganese plant. How much manganese are you spraying in my neighborhood at night while I'm asleep?
You know, when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time, and so, oh, that's cool. A jet just went over. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And the next thing you know, everybody in your neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why.
I gotta go back to America. I gotta go get ready for the bomb. What's up, baby? I'm getting ready to bomb. What's up, baby? I'm getting ready to bomb. You better watch out. Stick on the one. Stick on the one.
I don't vote. I don't have nothing to do with it. I got no dog in that race.
When your brother passed away, what was that like for you?
It wasn't hard at all. It was a 2-second phone call. He's gone. I had been preparing for 2 years, so I knew that it was coming.
What does that mean?
He said it a couple of years ago.
What would he say?
What he said was, I've done everything that I've come to do.
You know what we're gonna call this? The shirts against the blouse.
Play ball.
He was crossing cat. He was getting rebounds like Charles Barkley, snatching it down.
Shoot the J. Shoot it! Let's run a play. Computer blue. Darling Pickett.
Prince was incredible. You got a towel, man? It's kind of hot out here, man.
Why don't you purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka? Good hustle. Game. Blouses.
I was there. I seen it. You don't believe me? You think I'm making it up?
And I gotta ask you, did the Eddie Murphy basketball game depicted in the Chappelle Show really happen?
Good. In your face, Charlie Murphy. Good.
Yes, sir. It's a true story.
Sup, sobers. There is no doubt about it. Prince was a musical genius. Most people would say that the only true way to know who Prince really was is through his music.
Okay, so people think you're weird, they think you're strange. What do you want them to know?
The music.
Because outside of that, Prince is kind of an enigma. And personally, I think he thrived on that kind of energy. He thrived on people never really knowing who Prince was. Honestly, I can kind of relate. What most people don't know about Prince is that he was a pioneer from the start of his career all the way until the end. And he essentially wrote the blueprint for digitalized music and how the new world of music would run with the internet, with music being so freely distributable, shareable, bootlegged. Prince was truly years ahead of his time. And because of that, he was as misunderstood as the symbol that would become his name later on. Prince quickly realized no matter how talented you are, no matter how much you fight, and no matter how much you raise hell and try and shake things up, did he ever have full control over who he was as an artist. But what happens when an artist takes back that control? What happens when they become more powerful and more influential more of a threat than the machine that made them big in the first place? Well, to figure it out, we're going to have to see what's inside the music vault of the artist formerly known as Prince. And since he forgot the code to the vault, we're going to have to drill our way in.
Let's go.
All right. Welcome back to Sobering Stories with me, DJ Prince Trovsky. So I wanted to start things off today with a story. About 4 years ago, Kim had come across this Instagram profile for a young lady named Kimber Tiernan. Kim fell in love with her immediately. She is a spiritual guide. She's able to read the Akashic Records, and essentially the Akashic Records are a dimension of consciousness that tells a story of everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen in the future. Essentially, the Akashic Records tell the story of your soul as it exists in space and time. Kim had become fascinated with Kimber and was extremely inspired by her teachings and the things that she posted. And Kimber offers Akashic readings, so you can actually, go on a call with her. She'll open up your Akashic Records and she will actually look in there, and you're able to ask her any questions that you want, and she can access different answers for you based on what she sees in your Akashic Records. She does healing sessions. She has courses dedicated to teaching you how to read the Akashic Records yourself. And she teaches spiritual courses to help bring you more in alignment with your soul and the divine. As Christmas was approaching, I asked Kim, what do you want for Christmas this year? The only thing that she said she wanted was an Akashic Records reading from Kimber. It was obviously something I wanted to get for her, so I did. Now, it took Kim a little while before she actually cashed in on this reading, but when she finally did, she was so excited to report back to me about it.
Hi, my name is Kim. Some of you may already know me, but for those that do not, I am Nick's fiance, and I wanted to hop on here and give a quick testimonial to Kimber Tiernan, which is Nick's sponsor of the week. We had a really cool full circle moment with her, and he's going to give her a shout out this week, which I think is super amazing. But I got a reading done by her, an Akashic Record reading in August of 2022, I believe. And it was truly amazing. It was a beautiful experience. I would say that it definitely brought upon maybe somewhat of a dark night of the soul, but in the best way possible. I was able to shed pieces of myself that no longer served me, and I think I was just propelled forward in the right direction due to the clarity that her reading provided for me. She's just truly gifted, really, really, really talented, just amazing at what she does. And if you ever feel so inclined to get an Akashic Record reading, I could not recommend Kimber Tiernan enough. I enjoyed my reading by her so much, in fact, that I went on to take one of her classes. So she is a wealth of knowledge, and she is very gifted, and I feel so blessed to have been able to get a reading done by her. So check her out. Give her a follow on Instagram, or shoot her an email. But yeah, Kimber Tiernan is amazing. She emanates nothing but love and light, and this world is better having her in it. All right. Hope everyone has a great week. Bye-bye.
And every so often, you'll get this little thing that happens that really just reaffirms that thought and that feeling that you are, in fact, walking on the right path. And for me, that came not too long ago, maybe a month and a half ago. This is when Kim's best friend, Hannah, who's an amazing lifestyle, health, and fitness influencer on TikTok, she actually schedules her reading with Kimber Tiernan.
My best friend gifted me an Akashic Records reading with Kimber Tiernan, and at the time I had a lot going on in my life. I wanted to see clarity on my future and then just my life path in general. From the moment the session started, Kimber just had this very calming, welcoming presence, like I had known her for years, and I just felt really safe opening up to her right away. What stood out to me, I guess, the most during the reading were the coincidences that kept popping up. except they weren't really coincidental at all. They were things that were deeply true to my life, which felt really cool. By the end of the session, I felt really a spiritual awakening, but afterwards I was very emotional in the best way, but I felt something kind of like had shifted in me, and I got the clarity that like my life isn't set in stone and it's really mine to shape, but most importantly that I can trust myself to do that. And it just really was the best gift the most powerful gift I have received. I felt very peaceful and empowered afterwards.
I'm not 100% sure of the deets, but it sounds like Kimber was trying to remember who Kim was. I mean, it's been 4 years at this point. So she went to her Instagram and was just checking things out. And that's when she noticed a post that Kim had made about the channel. I had never seen Kimber. I had never talked to her face to face. We've only exchanged emails. And she watches Sobering Stories regularly. And it was such a crazy, serendipitous, full circle moment. She actually used to work in the music industry. So she's got kind of an insider's look at the stuff we talk about each and every week here. The moral of this story is if you've ever wondered what your life purpose is, if you want to understand yourself better and understand your relationships better, if you need clarity on some sort of challenge or issue you're dealing with in your life, if you want to know if your past lives are affecting things happening in this life, or if you need help healing those inner child wounds, then reach out to Kimber because her sessions are magical. I don't know, you just got to experience it for yourself. You can find her on Instagram. Her name's Kimber Tiernan. You can also find her on YouTube, and she has her own website. The YouTube channel is Nandi Presents, all one word. Her website is nandi.co. That's where you can register for her different courses, different sessions, and you can kind of check things out for yourself. For sure, go ahead and subscribe to her channel. Follow her on Instagram. And I just wanted to say thank you, Kimber, for sponsoring the episode today. I also really wanted to thank Kim and Hannah for their testimonials. And Hannah is an amazing health, fitness, and lifestyle influencer. And it would mean a lot to me if you would go to her TikTok page. It's hburton7, and just give her a follow. Gotta support the homies. I know today's sponsor went a little longer than normal, but that should show you just how important and just how impactful it is for me. And I wouldn't be telling you guys about it if it isn't something that I think could truly help you and has truly helped me, as well as Kim and Hannah. When I had asked Kimber who she thought we should talk about next on the channel, she said that she'd really like to know a lot more about what happened to the artist formerly known as Prince. And shoot, me too. Prince Rogers Nelson was born on June 7th, 1958 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dad's name was John Nelson, and his mom's name was Maddie Della Shaw. He had one sister named Tika Nelson. His family actually used to call him Skipper as a nickname. I don't really know why, but they did. Prince was born into a musical family. In fact, his name actually stems from his dad's band, the Prince Rogers Trio. His mom and dad actually met when they were playing at the Blue Note Jazz Club. John felt that Maddie had such a beautiful voice that he recruited her to sing in his band. They got married on August 31st, 1957, and then less than a year later, that's when they had Prince Rogers Nelson. Obviously, Prince grew up with music, and he was enchanted by his dad's piano by the early age of 3 years old. Though enchanted by it, Prince knew that the piano was off limits, and with his dad around, it was almost impossible for him to get the courage to try and mess around with it. It's not a toy. When Prince was 7 years old, John and Maddie actually separated and then eventually divorced, and this had a huge impact on Prince. I can relate. That same thing that happened with me and my parents, and it certainly does leave a lasting impact on you because you don't truly understand it. You wish things could be different, but you feel powerless. You have no control over it. However, with his dad gone, he finally had the courage to get up and start trying the piano, start learning how to play music. At the age of 12, Prince actually became less intimidated by his dad's piano skills and much more inspired by his skills. He would actually spend some time at the age of 12 living with his dad and practicing playing music, just really developing this musical bond with his dad. But his dad was very, very critical of him and always made him feel like he would never, ever be as good as he was on the piano or at music in general. Prince recalls that his dad would literally have dreams of his hands playing some sort of melody on the piano, and he would wake up immediately, head downstairs, and bust that tune out on the piano. It was like he was getting these downloads in his sleep of these new melodies, and they were always amazing. Prince would briefly attend Lincoln Junior High, and this is when he would meet one of his lifelong friends, Andre Simone.
His father's piano and played several television and movie theme songs, you know. I played along on a large-scale ukulele. I think for the first time in his life, and I know for the first time in mine, we found someone in each other who took music and all its possibilities extremely seriously. I think after that day, we were pretty much inseparable. We hung out all the time.
Kind of an interesting little fun fact about Andre. His dad, Fred Anderson, was actually friends with John Nelson. So these two kids finally made friends, but their dads were already friends because Fred Anderson had actually played with John in his band before. Prince and Andre really connected over their love for music, and they spent hours practicing over at Prince's dad's house. Eventually, Prince would transfer to Bryant Junior High School. Here he'd play baseball, basketball, football.
He was crossing cats like I was.
But he was also involved in band, and he would just practice playing pretty much all of the instruments. Prince was so gifted that he was actually able to play all these different instruments, but he refused to join the high school band. By this point, Prince's mom had remarried to a guy named Hayward Baker, and Prince recalls him being fairly abusive and actually locking him in his room multiple times. And this is what prompted Prince to run away, and he ended up staying with his dad. But then he got kicked out of his dad's house, and he spent some time living with his aunt, and eventually he would live with Andre and his family, developing a really close bond with both of Andre's parents. Specifically, he developed a really close bond with Bernadette Anderson, which was Andre's mom. Prince attended Central High School, and this is when he'd start getting involved in different local bands. He started a band called Grand Central, and they were actually pretty successful. They started playing homecomings and proms, community events, really starting to make a name for just these small town musicians in Minneapolis. They would compete in the Battle of the Bands, and a lot of the bands they were competing with, he would actually play with and, have cameos featured in their music as well. Prince was such a gifted musician that he had so much to offer, he could pretty much just hop in with any band and really add some life to it. But Prince was dead set on becoming a musician and really chasing his passion for music. Oh, and here's a little fun fact for you guys, because I know you love fun facts. Prince graduated high school on his birthday, June 7th, 1976. That's pretty wild, right? Immediately after graduating, Prince knew he needed to hop on pursuing this music career. So he saved up as much money as he could, doing these features, playing with other local bands like The Family or 94 East. And this is how he was able to get some recording time. And him and a guy named Chris Moon would actually get together at a studio in California, and they would record this song called Soft and Wet, in which Prince played all of the instruments and he sang on the track. Then Prince really felt like he needed to make a move. There was not a huge music scene in Minneapolis, and really in Minnesota in general, so he figured he needed to take that money that he saved from all these different sessions he played, and he moved to New York, where he'd live with his half-sister Sharon. Prince might have been in the right place, but he was having a hard time setting up meetings or getting anybody to listen to this demo he made. But Chris Moon, back in Minneapolis, Minnesota, decided to pass his tape onto a promoter and manager named Owen Husney. Owen was blown away because he didn't even realize that this was just one kid playing all the instruments and singing. He thought this was some full-on band.
I was immediately struck that this was something different. I turned to Chris and I said, who's the band here? And he said, well, Owen, it's not really a band. And I thought, oh no. I said, is it a bunch of studio musicians? Because I really don't want to work with studio musicians. They can't tour. And he said, no, it's not a studio band. It's one kid. He's just turned 18 and he's singing everything and playing all the instruments.
Owen was so impressed that he decided to offer Prince a management contract. Prince decided to take it, and he moved back to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's when he got linked up with Bobby Z and David Z Rivkin. And Bobby would be a drummer for Prince. David would actually be a producer/engineer on a lot of the tracks and recordings that he was making. For the first time ever, Prince had his own apartment, and he was really feeling strong about making some big moves. And he was extremely hopeful that Owen Husney would land him a major record deal. And sure enough, he ended up getting offers from 3 different major record labels, including Columbia, Warner, and A&M Music. After weighing out his options, Prince decided to sign a 3-record deal with Warner Brothers Records, and this would be one of the biggest deals for an untested artist that were ever signed at that time. Right out the gates, Prince started exerting his control. He wanted Warner to represent him as a new wave, new age pop artist. He wanted to have both male and female touring bandmates because he wanted to kind of encourage that cultural fluidity. He also wanted to produce his first album and create it entirely on his own. And that's exactly what he did. In 1978, he created the album For You, recorded entirely by himself, with only the help of his good buddy Andre Simone. Both Prince's first album, as well as his self-titled second album called Prince in 1979, didn't perform amazingly well, but it did set the stage for this new artist with this amazingly unique new sound that really fused both black and white culture into this single sound. Very similar to what Elvis was doing, which we talked about last week.
I was brought up in a black and white world. And yes, black and white, night and day, rich and poor, black and white. And I listened to all kinds of music when I was young. And when I was younger, I always said that one day I was going to play all kinds of music and not be judged for the color of my skin, but the quality of my work. And hopefully that will continue.
Up until this point, Prince was not a huge drinker. He didn't smoke. In fact, what he had done, he really didn't enjoy it. So he was pretty straight edge up until this point. But in 1980, he released his third studio album called Dirty Mind. And this is when people around him say he started sniffing the coffee table. And it seemed like he was just really experiencing the stresses and pressures of touring and becoming a famous musician. In 1981, Prince released the album Controversy, and then in 1982, he released the album 1999. I know, it's confusing. That's just how ahead of the times Prince actually was. Also in 1982, this is when Prince would re-sign a new contract with Warner Brothers, and this is kind of where the tension begins for both of them. Prince would go out and say that he just signed a $100 million contract with Warner Brothers, but Warner Brothers was like, no, that's a little bit exaggerated because the deal is only $100 million if you sell 10 records, and each of those 10 records have to sell more than 5 million copies. Otherwise, you won't get that $10 million advance for the next record. So the $100 million is contingent on Prince's record sales. Prince was confident that he'd be able to deliver on each one of these albums, even though he didn't have an album at this point that had sold more than 5 million copies. Prince would deliver because the album 1999 would hit 6.4 million copies sold, and then he released one of his biggest albums ever, Purple Rain, which sold 5.8 million copies. It's also around this same time frame that Prince would play that infamous game of basketball with Charlie Murphy.
All right, he beat you in basketball, and then what happened? After it was all over, he took us in the house to serve us pancakes. Pancakes. It was a good game.
I wish I could say the same for you and your crew of flunkies. Bitches.
Prince's brand new record label called Paisley Park Records, which was a partnership between Warner Brothers and Prince, creating this brand new record label. It would give him more control over his releases, his creative process, but it also gave him the power to sign new artists underneath his label. They figured he had a good sense of what would make money and what wouldn't, especially because he was making them money. They gave him more freedom and more control to be able to bring in new artists. Not only was Purple Rain the album successful, but the movie Purple Rain, starring Prince, was extremely successful. He said that it was only half fiction, but it does give you a glimpse into kind of who Prince is and his journey getting to where he was at that point. Apparently, after the formation of Paisley Park Records, Prince was still making albums. In fact, he would make one album per year from 1979 all the way until 2015. But Prince was also fairly occupied with his new Paisley Park Records endeavor, signing new artists, and putting money and time into making these artists successful as well. Warner Brothers did not really like that. They felt like Prince was taking creative control over everything and then not delivering on his end with what he said he was going to. He was not delivering on his end on the contract. And even worse, his Paisley Park Records was costing them money. He had spent $1 million trying to promote an album with Carmen Electra, where Prince was involved in a lot of the production on that album, but nobody knew who Carmen Electra was, and of course, it didn't make any money. So because of this, it's said that Warner Brothers actually stopped any sort of promotion. They had already really limited their promotion on Prince's stuff because he wasn't holding up his end of the bargain, but now they really throttled any sort of funding going into promotion in Prince's albums. This happened in 1993 when Prince dropped his Love Symbol album, and this album didn't perform well at all because Warner didn't promote it at all. But this is when Prince's eyes were really open to the fact that he was just a product that they were selling, and if they weren't happy with the product they were getting, then they weren't going to try and sell it. He was starting to feel like he was trapped in this contract. He couldn't win over Warner Brothers now to try and get them to promote his music, especially because they were having nothing but creative differences. Prince wanted full control over his music and what happened to it, how often he put it out, and Warner Brothers was concerned about profits. They didn't want to oversaturate the market, and they didn't want Prince to go too far off the track because they were worried that it wouldn't be profitable.
As it's been well chronicled in deep dispute with my record label. And
which is Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Which owns this network, I might add. Just
oh, they do?
Yeah, what?
They, we had some issues that were basically about ownership of the music and how often I was supposed to record and things like that. We got along otherwise. We just had came to head in those types of...
so there was no clash over what you would record or what kind of music you were singing, etc.?
No,
none of that?
No creative issues whatsoever. And they were gracious enough to allow me a very wide palette to, put colors onto.
This is when Prince really started wanting to separate himself from the record label. He really wanted to take control over his music, over his royalties, over all of his masters. But that's when he realized that Warner owns the rights to all of his masters. They also own the name Prince. They have it trademarked, so they own the name as well as Prince's likeness. So in 1993, on his birthday, on June 7th, he changed his name to the unpronounceable symbol, and that would leave everybody referring to him as the artist formerly known as Prince. But what he says he wants to be called is just the artist, because that's how they refer to XYZ artist when they're writing up the contracts, which he was feeling very much locked into this contract.
Do you know why Prince, the famous rock star that was a friend of mine, do you know why he called himself the artist when he came back? He calls himself the artist because that's what they call us in our contracts. Oh, these contracts are crazy. You should hear the terminology they say in these contracts. To use your name and likeness in perpetuity throughout the universe. Who the fuck could possibly know what that means?
That's also when he starts writing the word slave on his cheek, basically displaying that during interviews, live performances, meetings with record executives. I'm sure that they did not really like that.
A lot had to do with the fact that I was under chains, so to speak.
I know how that is.
In the business. And it's hard to speak about freedom when you're signed to a contract. And, a lot of my music has to do with being free.
Larry, back in the day in record labels, you become a slave. I mean, artists make no money, had all those hits, and end up in the game living homeless. And you're the first one to change all that.
Well, what a lot of artists, I think, don't recognize is that when they get into the business and they sign away the rights to the master recordings, it in fact makes you a slave in the sense that the proceeds from those master recordings for all of time will go to whoever owns them. And if you
Some cat who can't play.
Well, you said it, I did.
I did find it weird that the V is removed from the word, and I couldn't find a good explanation for why he did that. I mean, it's Prince, so it may have no real explanation, or it could be really significant. I don't know. Might mean something, might mean nothing, but if you know something, let me know. As you can imagine, this name change definitely hurt Prince's image and sales. As an artist, your name is like half of your brand, or maybe more than half.
But about the highest risk one would think someone who gets famous would take is to drop the name that got them famous.
Well, that was one of the things that I dealt with, is that I really searched deep within to find out the answer to whether fame was most important to me or my spiritual well-being, and I chose the latter.
People recognize your name. They want to go pay to see this person. They don't want to go pay to see this unpronounceable like love symbol. So it definitely hurt his like brand recognition, as well as his record sales, live show sales, and even worse, it hurt his reputation because people started to see him as this greedy diva that was just trying hard to get more money out of the record companies and wasn't satisfied with being hugely rich and famous. But in reality, he was really onto something. He was being screwed by these record companies, and he really was just a slave producing music for them, and then they were the ones profiting off of it. And if he didn't hit 5 million copies, he didn't even profit at all off of it. Nor did he own the rights to this music to be able to release it on his own at any point. The record company owns it. Also in 1993, Prince would be touring, and he was playing in Germany, and he was near this young lady named Mayte Garcia's house. So her mom actually went to the show, and she snuck a tape of Mayte belly dancing to one of Prince's belly dancers, and they passed that tape on to Prince. Prince watched it and immediately was in love. Unfortunately, this young lady was 16 years old, so Prince, being 35, realized that couldn't happen. So they kept in touch long distance until she was 18, at which point he then hired her on as a dancer with his team. And by the age of 19, on Valentine's Day in 1996, the two of them would get married. And this reminds me exactly of what we talked about with Elvis and Priscilla last week. She was 14 years old when she met Elvis at a show, and it was over in Germany. I don't know. Might mean something, probably means nothing, but whatever. 2 months after getting married, Mayte would find out that she was pregnant, and both of them were super excited, but unfortunately the doctors would find out that there was some complications with the baby. They needed to go in, run some tests, maybe do some corrective measures to help the baby in its development, but Prince said no. He said he was leaving it up to God to fix it. Months later, when baby Amir was actually born, he was born with type 2 Pfeiffer syndrome, which essentially involves tons of deformities and just, I don't know, poorly developed parts of the body. And type 2 can involve a lot of very risky developments that basically hinder you from living for very long. And unfortunately, after 6 days in the ICU, baby Amir had passed away. Very shortly after this happened, Prince and Mayte went on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where she asked about the rumors that this happened, and Prince basically shrugs it off, doesn't admit that anything happened, and says that everything's fine, but it definitely wasn't. Prince was really brokenhearted about this.
Status of your baby, your pregnancy, your...
Well, our family exists. We're just beginning it. And we got many kids to have, long way to go.
And that's all the artist and his wife choose to say at this time.
And then 2 months later, they would actually find out they were pregnant again, and she would have a miscarriage. So these two failures to have a baby really drove a wedge between the two of them. Honestly, things just started going downhill from there for Prince. 1996 is also when Prince realizes that he's got to get out of this deal with Warner. They're not promoting him at all because of all of his stunts at his live performances. He is basically throwing the record company under the bus and telling everybody how awful they are screwing him over. So, of course, they're not promoting any of his music, they're not doing anything to help him out, and they cut funding to the Paisley Park label. But Prince is still locked in a contract with Warner, so he owes them 3 more albums before he can get out of this contract. So he makes them a deal. He'll give them 2 albums right then and there, as long as they release him from his contract so that he can start being an independent artist. They agree. He gives them 2 albums, Chaos and Disorder, and The Gold Experience, which were not his best work. He was just giving them that to get him out of this contract. he's still locked in with Warner because they own his master recording rights, as well as his name, Prince, and any likeness of him. Once Prince was released from the label, he started his own label called The New Power Generation, which was named after his band that he played with. And this new label would start pioneering the way towards the digital age of music, starting to make moves that nobody had seen up until this point. But initially, in order to get his start, Prince had to start releasing these records, but using these big labels still in order to use their distribution network. But he didn't want to work with Warner, obviously, so he started working with all their competitors, record labels like Arista, UMG, Columbia, and he would just essentially use them for their distribution network, but they would contribute nothing in terms of the production of the albums. So Prince would cover all the production. He would also get all of the revenue from it because there was no upfront cost for the distribution network. They would just take their cut for distributing the records. Once Prince's contract with Warner finally ends in 2000, he was already released from his contract, but the contract officially ended in 2000. He was able to regain his Prince name and likeness back, but Warner Brothers still held the master recording rights as well as distribution rights for his music. And at this point, Prince and Mayte had really grown apart, not only because they lost 2 babies, but also Prince was starting to dive into being a Jehovah's Witness, and she was not really interested in that. In the year 2000, the 2 of them would officially get divorced. By 2001, Prince would then meet his second wife, Manuela Testolini. The 2 of them would get married on December 31st, 2001. This relationship was never going to last. Prince was too broken from his previous relationship, losing 2 babies, and this fight with Warner Records, and he started to become very controlling and very isolated from pretty much everyone around him. And the relationship, the marriage, only lasted 6 years, and the 2 of them got divorced in 2007. Because Prince had become a Jehovah's Witness, he had also dedicated himself to clean eating, so he was vegan now, and he had sworn off all substances. He already didn't drink or smoke the devil's lettuce. He was completely clean from any and every substance, according to Prince. However, after years of wearing high heels and jumping all over the stage, abusing his body in so many different ways while on tour, Prince started to have hip problems in 2005. And a lot of people recall him starting to use pain medication to manage this pain. Around 2007, this is when all of those websites started popping up that would allow you to download music for free. I'm talking about Napster, LimeWire, Pirate Bay, all of those torrent sites. And these torrent sites were kind of a big deal for the music industry. People were starting to get music for free that they had to pay for in the past. And from the very beginning, Prince realized this was not a good thing.
I know you haven't always loved the internet. How are you seeing progress right now with all of that? Can you use it to your advantage?
It's a double-edged sword. You know, a lot of artists aren't getting paid full scale for their art, and the internet, because of downloading and things like that, is kind of like a black hole, and it's hard to audit, it's hard to get accounting, and it's not that it's just about the money, but it's about justice and fairness. And when people say that they love you and they respect you, but at the same time take, 80% of your earnings, then expect you to fix your own communities, and they'll probably edit all of this out, but then it gets, that's the sharp part of the sword, and we're at the wrong end of it right now. So eventually, with courageous people going out there and actually saying something and standing up for it, I think we'll get some balance.
And he was one of the first artists to start litigating all these different companies, suing them for essentially copyright infringement and selling these bootlegs or allowing people to bootleg his music. But he also realized that there had to be a new way to start distributing music. The internet was going to be a game changer. And so one of the main reasons he was starting to litigate all these people was so he could get all of his music rights solely to himself, and then he would be able to distribute his music on his own social media platforms or his own website. And so that's what he did. He started distributing music directly to the consumer through his New Power Generation label. He started what's known as the NPG Club. So members would join for like $100 a month, and they would get access to all his new releases, as well as certain releases that he would give out that were unreleased tracks from his vault. One of the other revolutionary things he realized was that artists were going to have to start making money touring, doing live shows, making money actually on their performances as opposed to making money on their record sales, because the internet was making it way too easy for people to share music, stream music. Nobody was really buying albums anymore. So what he would do is he would give away his new albums for free when people bought a ticket to one of his live shows. And though his record sales wouldn't be amazing, it would still show up higher than it would have normally because people are still buying the album technically. So it showed his records were doing pretty well, and his live shows were extremely profitable. He was killing it in the live show game. But Prince really woke people up. Artists like Radiohead and Taylor Swift, they released all of their music independently because of this exact same thing that Prince was dealing with. They were not making any money by releasing under a record label, and now that they had this name, notoriety, brand recognition, they could release this stuff independently and make all of the money back for themselves, not having to give a huge chunk or half of the chunk to the record company. That's why you see all of Taylor Swift's Taylor's version versus the record company version. So if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you should be a Prince fan because, well, he started that. Prince was definitely not making a lot of new fans at this point. In fact, the only reason he was still making money was because of his diehard loyal fan base. So you'd think it'd be kind of crazy for him to then go out and start suing tons of his loyal fans. But that's what he did. On top of suing YouTube, Pirate Bay, eBay, Napster, and the Minnesota Vikings for using Purple Rain during a highlight reel. He also sued the Prince fan page in the UK, as well as 22 individual Facebook users who were basically sharing bootleg links on Facebook. Prince ain't messing around with copyright infringement. To add to the stress of all these lawsuits and trying to make it as an independent artist without a major label, Prince then has to undergo hip replacement surgery in 2010. And it's at this point that people note his opioid addiction either started or got immensely worse. And he really started to go downhill at this point. Prince realized that he needed to take a break and slow down. No, I'm just kidding. He kept touring. He kept making albums. Prince is non-stop. He's otherworldly, extraterrestrial. And despite all of the lawsuits and all of the hard work and all of the new albums Prince made, he was never as huge as he was in the early 80s. And of course, his earlier tracks, those were some of his most popular hits. Those are the ones that people wanted to keep playing and keep buying. So Prince never stopped trying to get his masters back. And finally, in 2014, he came to an agreement with Warner Brothers that he could have the rights to his masters back, but Warner Brothers still maintained distribution rights, which means they can choose how and when and where they can distribute it, as well as kind of make the call on how much they promote it. And they also maintained a percentage of any of the sales on those records. So he wasn't completely free of Warner Brothers yet. And the only reason that they even did this was because after 35 years, an artist is able to renegotiate the copyrights of their albums or their songs. And the 35-year mark was starting to come up for Prince's music. And instead of allowing him to take back his masters and lose those distribution rights, Warner wanted to keep the ball in their court a little bit. But technically, Prince did still hold the power because he now owned all of his master recordings, and he also owned all of his entire 8,000 track vault of unreleased music. 8,000 unreleased tracks. It's kind of like Mac Miller. He had this unreleased vault of just thousands of tracks. Because if Prince one day decided to just dump tons of his unreleased music out there or re-release his older albums because he now owns the master recordings, then that would horribly devalue any of the recordings or record sales that Warner was making on their distribution network because Prince would be distributing it through his digital distribution network. Then in 2015, Prince makes another macho move. He removes all of his music recorded before 1996 from all streaming platforms. He says the main reason is because streaming platforms don't pay the artists anything. He was probably one of the first artists to start coming out saying this, but it also starved Warner Brothers of any of the streaming platform music that they were getting from his music being streamed on Spotify or Pandora or whatever. In fact, Prince was trying to negotiate having his tracks released only on Tidal, but because Jay-Z wanted his full catalog of all of his music to be available on Tidal, Prince decided to say no, and he pulled the deal. And to this day, the heirs of Prince's estate, as well as Jay-Z and Tidal, are involved in an ongoing legal battle trying to get Prince's music pulled from the platform. So this should show you that Prince being alive could have had a dramatic effect on his music being pulled from Jay-Z's platform. And we already know how Jay-Z and Diddy handle issues that they have with people in the industry. Something to think about. I think it's safe to say that by this point, Prince had pissed off like 90 to 95% of the music industry. For a good reason, just trying to get what he's owed. He's making this music, he deserves to be compensated. But for this reason, it may come as no surprise that on April 15th of 2016, Prince was on a flight back from his show in Atlanta, headed back home to Minneapolis, when he was found unconscious and the plane had to make an emergency landing at 1:17 in the morning. They landed at Quad City International Airport. The official story is that he was having complications, experiencing flu symptoms, which is already a little weird.
In a search warrant executed last week and obtained by the LA Times, investigators seized all medical records, documents, prescriptions, and medical images related to Prince from Schulenburg's North Memorial Medical Center office. The document paints a picture of a man in need of serious medical attention the last 3 weeks of his life. According to the warrant, Schulenburg first saw Prince on April 7th, the same day Prince canceled 2 Atlanta concerts due to an illness. The day after the rescheduled performances on April 15th, Prince's plane made an emergency stop. Prince had to be treated at a hospital.
What we find out later is that he was administered Narcan, which obviously proves that he was having some sort of issues with opioids. Now, Prince comes out of it just fine, and in fact, he's doing so great that he plans a dance party for April 16th to celebrate everybody just, I don't know, showing him so much love and being there for him, which seems kind of weird. Supposedly, he just makes a very brief appearance at this dance party. At the end of it, when he's on stage, he's talking to the fans, and he tells everybody to save their prayers for a few days. What? What are you talking about? Now, it is worth mentioning that there's a good chunk of people, including comedian Dick Gregory, who think that Prince didn't make it out of this hospital. Prince actually died on that plane that day.
Well, remember, the night that he died the next day, he was on the plane. That same night they put him on the plane, he did a one-man concert at 8 o'clock and then another one. Why did they want him dead now? Huh?
I'm asking.
Because the white folks that killed him, they're not like niggas and ignorant white folk. I'll kill you, motherfucker. They do it 10 years later. Now, if I had to guess, I think when he went into that record company and talked to them folks with that slave thing on it, that's what got him killed.
Like a lot of people are saying, he had gotten the rights to his recordings.
He got the what?
The rights to his master recordings.
Well, they tell you that so you can repeat it. How you know?
He had said it.
Huh?
He had said it. His lawyers.
How you know that was him? How you know who the fucking lawyers was? Huh?
Okay.
Huh? That's where you, see, you talking to the master, but I got the listeners. You know how many agents? The number one government agent is the man Chicago's brother. Huh? Okay? Ain't nothing but CIA. Ain't nothing but CIA. So y'all come with this little weak shit. But they're gonna tell you the motherfucker didn't have no insurance, no will, but they got motherfuckers do his hair before he go out on stage, twist the back of his clothes, make sure ain't no lint on it, but they can convince you he didn't have no goddamn. If you hate all your family, you do what that woman did, the billionaire woman in New York, Hemsley, left it to her goddamn dog. It's a game. It's a fucking game, man. And the most important thing, the plane he was on is owned by Warren Buffett. He's the one who rented the planes.
Evidence against this is obviously the dance party that he hosts where people say that they saw him there. There's also this video footage of him entering his doctor's office, Dr. Schulenburg, who supposedly has been prescribing him different opioids, helping him with this flu situation. And then there's also these photos of Prince riding around on his bike outside of his compound. And Dick Gregory makes a good point that there's no paparazzi around, there's no people crowding him, there's nobody. It's just Prince riding his bike alone, and somehow TMZ, who is owned by Warner Brothers, need I remind you, somehow got this photo of Prince riding his bike around. Super weird.
There were pictures that TMZ circulated, supposedly of Prince riding a bicycle and waiting outside of a Walgreens.
I'm surprised you asked me that. I mean, this is for the people. That was after he came back from Atlanta. Day before he died, outside the compound. And you didn't see no crowds around the motherfucker? Hey, Prince, huh? Then who in the fuck is TMZ?
They're owned by Time Warner,
And who in the fuck is Time Warner?
his old record company.
Huh?
His old record company.
Okay, case closed.
Plus, it's super grainy. You can barely tell if this is Prince or not. Apparently, this whole OD situation really scared Prince into wanting to go into rehab. So on April 21st, 2016, he actually scheduled for an addictions counselor named Howard Cornfield to come over to his house and help explore different options for what he could do to help him with his issues.
Lawyer William Mosey represents Dr. Howard Kornfeld, renowned addiction treatment specialist, who said Prince's representatives reached out to him the day before he died.
Dr. Kornfeld felt that his mission was a life-saving mission.
Dr. Cornfield couldn't make it, but he sent his son, who was actually training with him as an addictions counselor, to help Prince out and explore these options. Once he got to the house, him as well as Prince's staff couldn't find him anywhere in the house. They kept searching and searching until finally they found him unresponsive in his elevator.
It was car for a medical, Paisley Park, 7801 Audubon Road, 7801 Audubon Road, for a fail down, not breathing. Rescues and started reading out. And as nurse, you needed paramedical at Paisley Park, 7801 Audubon Road. Person down, not breathing, time for 9:45. 48. Chief 1, CPR started. 10-4 CPR started, 9:49.
TMZ's the first on scene. They release all of these pictures of Prince's body. I find it very interesting that all the police reports say that his body was found in the elevator, and yet all these pictures of Prince are him outside of the elevator. What's going on here? When police arrive, they try to revive him, but unfortunately they're not able to. They find multiple pill bottles scattered around the house, as well as this random pile of white powder, which I found to be kind of interesting. Prince never snorted anything. In fact, he just took pills. That's all his friends ever noticed him doing.
The news they feared was confirmed as distraught fans gathered outside Prince's Paisley Park complex in Chanhassen, Minnesota. The body discovered earlier at his home was that of Prince himself, dead at age 57. The music icon, best known for songs like Purple Rain, Kiss, and Raspberry Beret, had been suffering from flu-like symptoms and had been forced to cancel shows in recent days. Last Friday, his private jet was forced to make an emergency landing in Moline, Illinois, after the singer fell ill from the flu mid-flight. He promptly flew home for some rest after being released from the hospital. The cause of the pop idol's death is under investigation.
When the official autopsy and toxicology report comes back, it shows that the pain meds that Prince was taking were actually laced with that Fentanyl.
The medical examiner's report says the fatal dose was self-administered and his death was an accident. Investigators are leaning toward the theory that he took the pills, not knowing they contain the drug.
You can envision the case of Prince. He took what he thought was a lower dose of a narcotic, and it ended up being a significantly higher dose.
Some pills found in Prince's Paisley Park mansion were falsely labeled as Watson 385, indicating they contained hydrocodone and acetaminophen, which is the active ingredient in Tylenol. But at least one of those pills tested positive for fentanyl. The potent drug is responsible for a growing number of deaths in the United States.
Now, this exact same thing happened to not only Matthew Perry, but also Mac Miller. And in both cases, they pursued criminal charges trying to find out who supplied them with these laced narcotics. However, in Prince's case, they did not press any criminal charges on anybody. And the reason they didn't is because they couldn't find any reasonable suspects for where he may or may not have gotten these pills from. They know for sure that Dr. Schulenberg was prescribing him pain meds in Prince's bodyguard's name, and because of this, they end up fining him $30,000. Apparently, they weren't able to trace any of these laced pills back to Dr. Schulenberg.
Prince Rogers Nelson was being treated by Minnesota doctor Michael Schulenberg for an undisclosed illness, and now law enforcement want to know if it had anything to do with how the singer died. It's not known what medications Schulenberg prescribed, but he told authorities it could be filled at a local pharmacy. The next day, Thursday, April 21st, Schulenberg went to Paisley Park to deliver Prince's medical test results. He came upon a death scene instead.
Dr. Schulenberg is no longer employed at the medical center. A spokesperson would not tell us why or how he left. And Scott, according to the warrant, Prince's estate manager says the singer dealt with health issues for at least a year.
However, we do have another doctor named Dr. D. This is a known drug dealer who only will go by Dr. D in this article, but he claims that he was supplying Prince with narcotics for multiple years, from 1984 all the way up until 2008. I thought it was really interesting because he says he was buying like 40 grand worth of opioids, but he also says that he was buying these Fenty patches. I didn't know that was a thing, number one, but that would also lead me to believe that he would have some sort of tolerance for this and might even be intentionally procuring these pills off the streets. And honestly, I don't know what to believe because Prince wouldn't allow drugs to travel with anybody that was on his tour, and he always claimed that he was clean from any drugs. But I also have a bunch of ex-girlfriends and friends saying that he would dabble with different pills, he would dabble with snorting the coffee table, he would do hallucinogens. So I don't know what to believe. Then we've got this dealer, Dr. D, coming out saying that he's been supplying Prince for years. But Prince isn't there to deny it. Nobody else would know because he was very private. So who really knows what the truth is? Also, just a side note, what big dealer is going to come out of the woodworks and make themselves even mildly known as someone who dealt to a famous person? Like, why would you do that? You just wouldn't do that. Not anybody I know anyway. There's speculation that Prince went to rehab in 1994 because he took a 1-week period where he just disappeared. Nobody on his touring staff or within his entourage could figure out where he went. And he comes back and said that he couldn't or didn't play guitar or play music for 7 days. And the only thing they could have thought of that he would have been doing that he couldn't play music for 7 days would be being in rehab. But because Prince was so private and so isolated, it's hard to really know how deep or how far gone he was in this addiction, if he was at all. Initially, things seem fairly straightforward, but when Prince passed away, he did not identify any single person or a group of people to be the beneficiary of his massive estate, valued at nearly $300 million. This is called intestacy, and essentially what happens when you don't have a will written out is they just go through all of your next of kin and figure out who the next of kin would be. In this case, it would be 6 of his full and half siblings, and then they divvy up his estate equally amongst them. So each of his 6 siblings gets 1/6 of the estate. They're all fighting and battling over different parts of the estate. And not only that, we've got these music companies who still own partial rights or distribution rights or some sort of rights to Prince's music. They're trying to get their hands on all of these masters. They're trying to get their hands on all of Prince's music now that he's gone. He's no longer there to fight for his music. One of the biggest questions I had was, if Prince was taken out, why would they do this? He's had his music rights, his master's rights for 2 years at this point. So what's the motive here? But that's when I realized that Prince held the power. If he was alive, then he had the power to release music that was unreleased or re-release his old music digitally, basically skipping over any of the distribution that Warner was entitled to. So all of these little skims of profits they were going to make on all of his tracks, they're not going to make that anymore. But if Prince is gone, if he's no longer in the picture, if he's no longer able to threaten the release of all of these unreleased tracks, then that's great for Warner, right? And I've talked about this many times on my channel, but Prince might have been worth more dead than alive at this point. We all know that when an artist dies, their record sales go way, way up. And Warner wouldn't be the only one to benefit. He also released music with Arista Records, Columbia Records, and UMG Records. And let me just remind you that Arista and Columbia were both being run by Clive Davis at the time, and UMG Records is the parent company of Geffen Records. So there's a lot of really shady characters who have a history of people suddenly disappearing around them, typically exhibiting flu-like symptoms just before that happens, just like Prince was on the plane. So there was a lot of people that stood to benefit from Prince not being here. All of those people involved in the music industry. And Prince did not have very many friends in the music industry. He was kind of on the opposite side of everybody in the music industry. I also found the timing of everything to be very suspicious because 35 years from 2016 would be 1981. So the albums that Prince had made in the mid-80s that were his most popular, most profitable albums were just about to be coming up to be renegotiated and renegotiate these copyright contracts. So it was in their best interest to get rid of Prince before this 35-year mark on those popular albums came up. So not only does Warner own the distribution rights to all of Prince's music, but they also work very closely with a publishing company and talent management company called Primary Wave Music. Now, we have already talked about Primary Wave on my channel before. In my episode on Whitney Houston, we also talked about Clive Davis and his connection with Primary Wave because Primary Wave also accumulated most of Whitney Houston's catalog, as well as Kurt Cobain's, after making some deal with Courtney Love. But Primary Wave made a comeback here because they ended up purchasing back 50% of Prince's master recordings from his siblings, from these 6 heirs that inherited all of his estate. 3 of them sold their share back to Primary Wave Music. And of course, Primary Wave is likely working in cahoots with Warner Brothers, UMG, all of these different major labels because that's what they do. Now, Primary Wave is an interesting company because they were founded in 2006 by a guy named Lawrence Mestel, and he used to work underneath Clive Davis at Arista Records. And then he branched off and started Primary Wave Music. Now, the company was doing just fine, but in 2016, the same year Prince passed away, they received a $300 million donation from BlackRock so that they could expand their endeavors. This would make them the largest music publishing company at that time. Now, I'm sure you guys probably already guessed this, but Warner Brothers, one of their biggest stockholders, besides Vanguard and State Street, would be BlackRock. So BlackRock now basically owns Primary Wave, and they're a major contributor to Warner Brothers music, as well as all of these other major record companies. So Primary Wave owns 50% of Prince's music, and Warner Brothers owns 100% distribution rights. The only thing standing in the way of Primary Wave acquiring 100% of Prince's recordings and vault, basically, is the Prince Legacy LLC, which was formed by the last 3 remaining heirs that have not sold their shares to Primary Wave. In fact, they started this LLC so that they could fight all of these releases that they're trying to put out, as well as this whole new documentary that supposedly will never be released, because it basically paints Prince in a bad light. And of course, at this same time, Michael Jackson is also in his feud with Sony Records, basically going through the same exact thing. And he says straight up that these record companies will basically kill you over your music rights. And he's not alone. Suge Knight basically says that the record industry will take out anybody who even remotely tries to fight back.
What do you believe about the people around Diddy and what everybody knows?
Well, first of all, you got to start with at the top. You're starting with the top. Clyde Davis, Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, Jimmy Iovine. Even if you take Jimmy Iovine, he had an allegation from him, same thing, it went away. He had an allegation from him, same thing, it went away. You take Jimmy Iovine. They told me at Universal and Interscope, they said, you know what? We can't deal with artists that gets in trouble. And your artist gets in trouble and they talk crazy. They speak about what they see. And your artist gets in trouble and they talk crazy. They speak about what they see. Now, I was told that I can't do business there because of that. So when you look at all these things and everybody want to say Puffy, 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 don't get me wrong. Yeah, Puffy stepped in this shit, and even if he wiped the shit off his shoe, it still stinks. But he's not the only one.
And though he doesn't directly name Prince, it's pretty obvious that he's referring to Prince and any of these other artists who fight back. But Prince's music wasn't even the only reason they might want to take him out. He was very outspoken when it came to different conspiracy theories. In fact, he predicted 9/11 like 3 years before it happened in 1998.
I gotta go back to America. I gotta go get ready for the bomb. Osama bin Laden getting ready to bomb. Osama bin Laden getting ready to bomb. You better watch out.
He also talked a lot about chemtrails and how he remembers vividly seeing the chemtrails in the sky and then noticing how it was causing people in his neighborhood to be violent with each other, which he felt was part of the plan. And then, of course, he exposed the evils within the music industry and how they basically use artists for their own financial gain.
Ever since my third album, I wasn't really taking large advances from the recording companies. I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. So the way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work. I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise. And they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, you know, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. And that's kind of the situation we're in right today. They're not going to exist much longer. It's not like we're against them or anything like that. The idea is that we find better ways of working with one another. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing that they ship, you know, right? Because ultimately, it keeps us apart, and it keeps the people in power in charge of us. So ultimately, we're going to have to learn how to be together and become one people. Get some elders up in here. Let's talk about all this. Distribution service. I mean, what do we really need record companies for? I mean, really.
And so at this point, I had fully accepted that it was very possible that the music industry took out Prince. But then I found something that literally nobody is talking about, you guys, and I can't understand why. I found this guy named Olando Enoex, something like that. Now, this dude has filed multiple different lawsuits against Comerica, who's the executor of Prince's estate, as well as different record companies, different heirs and people who inherited things from the estate. And he is claiming in all of these different lawsuits that he is in fact Prince Rogers Nelson. He says that his death was misreported and he is not actually deceased, and he is trying to claim back the rights to his music and his estate. Now, the first thing I noticed is that his name is like impossible to pronounce. Prince was notorious for using words that I'd literally never heard of. So his vocabulary and his imagination and creativity would definitely come up with a name like this if he was going to have a fake name. But he's also never in court for any of the hearings, for any of these cases that he's filed. And he keeps filing different exemptions for him to not have to be in court. And I find it very interesting that he has all of these lawsuits and they seem all very well put together. So he must have a pretty good legal team. And the way that he's litigating everybody this way is very reminiscent of the way that he was filing lawsuits against all of these different piracy bootleggers and all of these people that were illegally distributing his music. He even writes this letter to the courts and he includes pictures of himself. It's kind of weird. And then I found some other court documents that were showing that he had a lawsuit against Comerica. And in these documents, it says Olando Enoex, or however you say it, aka Prince Rogers Nelson. That's on an official court document. But then I really started thinking about it, you guys. There was multiple occasions where Prince, quote unquote, predicted his own death.
The haunting song, Sometimes It Snows in April. In an eerie coincidence, Prince died on April 21st. This song was first recorded on April 21st, 1985.
All the things they say never last.
Sheila, do you even want to know how he died?
In my heart, I already know.
You think you do?
Absolutely.
What do you think happened?
Yeah, I can't share.
He had this huge fear of elevators. He supposedly died in an elevator.
The one thing that, kind of spooked me about it all was he has a song called Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah.
And it says, don't let the elevator bring us down. One time when I was with him privately, he said, you know what the elevator is, right?
No.
I said, no, what's the elevator? He said, well, the elevator is the devil, right? It scared me. I don't like to talk like that, but he said that. And so for me, it was like really haunting when I read that he was found in an elevator.
E.T. confirmed the iconic artist was found dead in an elevator on Thursday.
Even though the pictures show he wasn't in the elevator. And then on the day that he died, he had actually posted on his Twitter account, he said, just when you thought you were safe. What does that mean? Then throw in there that TMZ was the one mainly reporting about his death, and the fact that there was no toxicology report ever produced. The toxicology report supposedly says that this was a classic OD situation. And finally, no criminal charges were ever filed.
What is your opinion on the Schulenburg settlement where he was fined to pay $30,000? The county attorney had said that was for prescribing the drug under a different name.
Right.
Do you think that that was the necessary thing to do?
Yes, in order to resolve that. Plus, that was really the only person who had some exposure. And we've talked about this before, too, where all of the players in this case, the one person that seemed the most at jeopardy was the doctor, because he supposedly wrote a prescription to someone else who then gave it to Prince. And under DEA guidelines and state law, you have to write a prescription for the person who's actually going to be receiving the medication.
The bottom line here is there are a number of people who are, in fact, responsible for Prince's death. Prince, first of all, right? He's taking drugs that he knew were not prescribed to him. But somebody laced these counterfeit drugs with fentanyl. Somebody sold them. Somebody bought them. These are questions that even after 2 years, are we any closer to answers? Not really.
Not really. Because
somebody's got to talk?
That's exactly right. Because no matter how much we advance in law enforcement, technology, criminal investigation, it really comes down to, in these cases, that someone has to talk. And just because someone is addicted to drugs does not mean that someone else has the authority to sell them more drugs. This is what is a big problem in society, but in these cases, somebody needs to talk. And without them talking, you're never going to resolve it.
The doctor had to pay $30,000 for writing a prescription to his bodyguard and not Prince. And even though they have this Dr. D drug dealer guy come forward admitting he sold fentanyl stuff to Prince, he's still not looked into. This guy is not suspect number one. No criminal charges were filed. Super sus. But the fact that he was predicting his own death before it happened, saying things like, save your prayers for a few days, that made me think that he had a little something something up his sleeve. So maybe, just like Elvis last week, maybe Prince faked his own death. So I don't know, you guys, but I'm not gonna lie, I was ecstatic when I found that Olando Enoex stuff, because nobody else is talking about it. Literally nobody else is talking about that guy. And I couldn't find pictures of him. I couldn't find any information about him other than the fact that he's suing a bunch of people claiming to be Prince Rogers Nelson. But what do you guys think? I'm curious if you guys think that Prince might have faked his own death. Maybe you think that the record companies had something to do with it. Maybe you think he just OD'd. I don't know. Drop it in the comments. Wanted to quickly thank Kimber Tiernan again for her support and for sponsoring this video. Please go show her some love, follow her, enroll in one of her courses, get yourself one of those amazing readings like I got. But thank you. And also, amazing topic. I was super stoked to dig into this one. But that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you for sitting and hanging out with me again for a really long time. But I do look forward to doing this again next week with you guys for another one. But until then, sleep safe, stay sober, and really watch out for Clive Davis.
One thing I wanted to say is don't be fooled by the internet. It's cool to get on the computer, but don't let the computer get on you. It's cool to use the computer, don't let the computer use you. You all saw The Matrix. There is a war going on, the battlefield's in the mind. The prize is the soul. So just be careful. Be very careful. Thank you.
Later, sobers.
Let's go.